and welcome to The View from the EBRD. We're here in Cyprus and we are at the annual event of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. And I am now joined by Bojan Markovic, the Deputy Director for Economics Policy and Governance at the EBRD. Thank you very much for joining me. Now, you are the head of the overlooking of NPLs within the EBRD. And the EBRD's non-performing loan initiative has been going on for a while, but this year especially we have heard mentioning in the economic outlook that NPLs are hampering growth within the region. Now tell me, what's the latest from your perspective in the SEE region?
Indeed, non-performing loans are a drag on growth, even when they are fully provisioned, because non-performing loans waste managerial time in both banks and corporates, and because they render performing loans more expensive. So non-performing loans usually go up when the country goes through a recession or economic downturn, but non-performing loans themselves are dragging the growth further, prolonging the economic downturn. So we have to go somehow out of that vicious circle. Non-performing loans in Central and Southeastern Europe, in many cases, reached 15 or even 20%. We know that in Cyprus and Greece, they are even much above 20%, and that's too large. Historically, what we saw in previous episodes of high NPLs, be it like developed countries such as Japan or Scandinavian countries, or being the emerging economies, is that we always need a consistent, focused regulatory action in order to resolve those high NPLs. And in order for regulators to be ready to do such an action, quite a lot needs to be done before. So one needs to have a comprehensive plan on sort of what set of legal actions, bankruptcy law, insolvency law, tax issues and so on. All of that has to be in place, but also one needs to have good skills and capacity to resolve large NPLs. Because bear in mind, in this region, most of the NPLs are corporate NPLs. So once you start resolving those large NPLs, you have a lot of corporates to restructure. Some of those corporates are viable businesses. Those restructurings last 2 to 4 years. So for that, you need quite a lot of skilled people. So before countries start resolving the NPLs, they need to put everything in place. And that's part of the cause for the delayed reaction. The good news for this region is that we indeed, after several years of engagements in what is indeed EBRD-led NPL initiative, but done in collaboration with many other international financial institutions, and of course the authorities of the countries that we engage with, we did several years of preparations, implementation and so on, and partly as a result of this initiative, I am very happy to report that over the past year we saw some of the easing in non-performing loans in some of the Central and Eastern European economies. But as we said earlier today, in many other regions and countries outside Central and Eastern Europe, NPLs are still on the rise.
Now, which ones are the countries which have actually seen a fall in NPLs then?
So countries that started with NPL actions and resolutions sooner rather than later, countries such as Slovenia, for example, saw a fall in NPL. 2 years ago, Slovenian NPLs were close to 20%. These days, Slovenian NPLs are single digit. Countries like Romania, for example, are countries that also started an action in 2013 and that are recently seeing a fall in NPLs. But many other Central and Eastern European countries that started an action a year or so ago also see very recently some of the falls. And I'm also happy to report that a fall often comes because of the private sales of distressed assets. Now that is because partly through EBRD, we are bringing more and more foreign NPL investors, which is a part of the problem solution.
Now, and in which countries in the SEE region do we still have some requirements? I've seen there's quite a high debt ratio in respect to countries that might be in financial difficulties, in countries like Croatia, Serbia.
Indeed. Croatia and Serbia are partner countries to MPL initiative, and we are doing quite a lot of work in Croatia and Serbia. So we saw some small fall in the MPL ratios, but still nothing substantial. Countries that are just starting being engaged with steps towards MPL resolution, countries like Bulgaria, still have an NPL ratio of around 20%. And of course, Greece and Cyprus are countries where we are having some action, but MPL levels are very high. That's in this region. If we take a look at Central Asia or in the Southeast Mediterranean region, NPLs, I'm afraid, are still on the rise in that region.
And you mentioned necessary steps in the NPL resolution. Obviously, there's many, including functioning insolvency regime, functioning judiciary, so on and so forth. Are there any specific points that still need to be taken in some specific countries to highlight?
Yeah, many of the issues are common amongst countries. So that is the reason why, for the purpose of knowledge sharing of the best practices, we started or recently launched the so-called MPL initiative website with best practices that can serve both regulators, stakeholders, investors of sort of giving overview of best practices in different countries. And we also started issuing our semi-annual publication called NPL Monitor to monitor not only what is happening with the MPLs and the sales, but also what is happening with the reforms in countries that need to resolve MPLs, reforms in the segment of MPL resolution. But of course, the solution cannot be one size fits all. It's really specific to each country. In some countries, that might be legal, bankruptcy law or insolvency issues. In some countries, more of a tax. In some countries, it's big skill shortages. So these websites and NPL Monitor can serve to look at what are the best practices in countries in the past or currently, but it's up to the authorities, the international financial institutions and investors to look at each separate country and devise a specific plan.
Bojan Markovic, thank you very much.
Thank you.